Welcome to IT Newbies, the podcast where we dive into the world of technology with experts from all walks of life. I'm Brent Ingram, and in each episode, we'll be talking to IT professionals about their career journeys, from their early days as newbies to the heights of success they've achieved. And don't worry if you're new to IT, because we'll also be breaking down complex tech topics into beginner-friendly discussions. So whether you're just starting out in the field or looking to level up your skills, join us on IT Newbies as we explore the exciting world of technology together. Subscribe now and never miss an episode. All right, welcome to IT Newbies. Today I have my good friend Brian McNeilly. Brian, thanks for hopping on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how you doing today?
Good. It's been a slow Friday work-wise. So in Washington is known for being gray, but today it's like a California day out there. So nice and sunny, 75. It's good.
Perfect. All right, so Brian, tell me, what is your job role?
Yeah.
What position are you?
So I work on a team at Microsoft called ACE, which is short for Azure Cloud Engineering. And when we were conceived, Microsoft uses two teams to manage customers. They have an account team, which manages the business side, and a cloud solution architect team that manages the planning deployment side. And then consultants and field engineers, or now they're called customer engineers, will fall under them. And they conceived us as the management of the front end troubleshooting experience for Microsoft customers. And I'm specifically on the team that manages the Azure government customers. So big government contractors, department of, city of, state of, any of those departments, we're working on their resources. Most front end teams at Microsoft, they all deal with a specific SME area or a vertical, so networking, virtual machines, storage, etc. But my team, we don't have verticals. So while I am tagged as a Azure networking SME, so host networking specifically, I also work in AAD authentication. I work in Linux to a limited extent. I work in Azure App Service Infrastructure. Usually when it goes to code, I reach out to a buddy. But I will take any and all cases. Today, actually, I took a Azure SQL DB like clustering case because I had a DNS aspect to it, and I'm one of the best DNS guys on my team. So I tell new people that our job is not to solve cases; it's to ensure they get solved. And so we sometimes solve them ourselves, sometimes half solve them, sometimes collaborate with customer service and support teams, sometimes reach out to architects, consultants, whoever we need to bring the case to resolution. So that's what I'm doing on a daily basis, is grabbing tickets that need help, sometimes jumping on other people's calls and trying to resolve whatever the customer's facing.
Okay, awesome. All right, so you work within Azure for big government contracts, and it's not your responsibility necessarily to solve it, but to make sure that their problem gets solved. And so you're kind of delegating, managing, and just reaching out to people, and working like a team to solve problems.
Yeah.
Awesome. How did you get into IT?
So I was an infantry officer with a degree in biblical studies and theology, looking to do something else. I was originally going to get into criminal investigations in the Army. I did an internship with the CID team and realized I just really like solving problems. One of my squad leaders, who I deployed with when I was a platoon leader to Afghanistan, he had done this program called Microsoft Software and Systems Academy. It's a trade school, essentially. It's 5 months long. If you're still active duty when you're doing it, it's for veterans or active duty from all branches of service. We happen to have a cohort on site at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where I was stationed at the time. And he had just graduated it. And when I was getting promoted to captain, he showed up and was like, "You'd crush this course. I think you'd really like it." When I was telling him I liked problem solving, I realized I wanted to do something like that. So he convinced me to do the course. and this was like 6 weeks before the start date. Now at this point, the MSSA is so popular, you need to sign up like a year out. But I passed
Oh
a
wow.
networking certification, like a fundamental certification. And then, yeah, went into this course where my orders were to be at the Ed Center, Education Center. I was, my uniform was business casual. And for 5 months, I was just learning um, Windows Server and Azure. At the end of that course, I ended up with 5 certs. I had my networking fundamentals. I did CompTIA, Net Plus, Sec Plus,
Mhm.
and Windows Server 7740 and 7741, which is installation and configuration and networking with Windows Server. And I really hadn't gotten into Azure, but as part of the
Yeah.
program, we got an initial interview with Microsoft. I was selected to go to final round interviews, and I had offers to be a PM with Xbox or to be an engineer on the virtual machine or networking teams. And I was actually given the choice: do you want to do virtual machine or
Oh
networking? And I
wow.
had spent most of my time doing like Kali Linux, and most of my certs had a networking component, so I selected networking. Yeah, and so I had to move out from Tennessee to Washington, and where I live now, and
Yeah.
I just got thrown into the fire at Microsoft. So that was my summarized journey.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's so good that they provided a trade school like
Hmm.
that and that you found it, and also that you had a friend that recognized,
Yeah,
well, IT is all about problem solving. If you love doing that, then you'll never get bored
right.
in IT because there's always a new problem to solve.
Yeah. Oh, I guess an appendix to that story, the guy who convinced me to do the course, his name is Mike Hedge. He
Mhm.
originally went to work for a company called PG Tech and was kind of like a program manager over there, an IT program manager. Worked there for
Yeah.
about 4 years, but I convinced him to jump to my team, and so he's been working with me now for about the last year or so, which is really cool.
Oh,
To
cool.
He was one of my favorite NCOs or sergeants when I was a platoon leader. I worked with him while I was in staff and in a platoon, and now I get to talk to him every day about network stuff. So it was a really really good transition, and it's really really nice to have that friendship still.
Oh, yeah, that's really beautiful because yeah, it really is all about relationships, and
Hmm.
it's cool that he was able to get you started in the beginning of your, career, and then you were able to, wrap him back around, and obviously you have loved working at Microsoft. Otherwise, you
Hmm.
wouldn't have, recommended him to come
Yeah,
come
yeah.
work with you. Um, but yeah, I love when things get to line up with that, and also just getting to work with friends that are smart and competent.
Hmm.
um yeah, that's a blessing because we've all worked with people who aren't
Yeah,
competent.
100%. Yep.
So in your IT career, is there, I guess, one lesson that you've learned in the job that you think that everyone in general should learn at some point in their life?
Yeah, I think that bringing emotional intelligence to the table, especially in like a customer facing role,
Mhm.
is of supreme importance. I see I see a lot of folks who, when they talk to a customer, they're not aware that the customer is frustrated, angry, afraid. Maybe they had a bad day before they left for work. Maybe their boss
Yeah.
is telling them, "Hey, if you don't get this solved by the end of the week, that's a red mark on your record, or you're going to get fired or whatever." And so, because customers are in this place where they're not in the emotionally best spot when they open a ticket,
Hmm.
um, a lot of times they tell you what they feel the problem is, but not what the actual problem is. And so,
Yeah.
as a troubleshooter, like, computers are binary things, right? Either something's turned on or off, something works
Yeah.
or it doesn't. There's no subjectiveness to how a computer works, and so uh, you can sum up what you know and don't know about a case in axioms. And a lot of times the customer is telling you, "I know for a fact it's this," and
Hmm.
bless their hearts, it often is not. So I
Yeah.
think that bringing emotional intelligence to the table, being able to see through one, that this person is hurting in some way, afraid, they're just flooded. Um,
Hmm.
One, you can spend time um, uh, I guess like deconflicting that, um, kind of leveling out the situation, but also
Yeah.
like you can see through it and say like, okay, they're telling me they think this. How did they prove it? Because if you're not asking those questions of like, did you, if it's a DNS problem and they're like, we can resolve this name, but they haven't done an NS lookup. No, you don't know that.
Yeah.
And it's not because you're stupid or a bad person. It's because you're not thinking clearly. And so let me think clearly for you. Let me tell you the tests that we should run. Let me tell you the logs that we need to pull. Um, and then a lot of times that's going to lead to a faster resolution if you come in there emotionally intelligent. If you come in saying, hey, like you sound frustrated. I understand. Like I would be frustrated too if I had
Hmm.
worked on this problem for 4 hours before opening a ticket and then I have to wait 2 hours to get an engineer. That sounds frustrating. But we're going to do the best that we can do. Here's my battle plan, or here's how we're going to break down this problem. Let's review the things that we know and don't know for sure, and the things that we need to find out. And that's usually a quick way to make a bad situation good.
Oh, that's so good.
Hmm.
Yeah, emotional intelligence um, is huge when it comes to IT and just problem solving in general. Yeah, one thing that was taught to me was that in IT, it's like 70-80% knowing how to deal with people's emotions,
Hmm.
where they're coming from, and then the rest is the actual technical
Right.
know-how.
Hmm.
A lot of times, how did you build up your emotional intelligence? Like, were you
The
taught that specifically, or
So I would say I wasn't raised in a home where emotional intelligence was specifically taught. Like I don't think I ever saw my parents fight, for example. So I
yeah,
never saw a fight be resolved.
mm,
I don't remember times where my parents like apologized to me if they did something wrong. Um,
yeah,
but when I was growing up, I still am. I was really into hardcore punk music, and
yeah,
that was the first place where I like learned to think emotionally, because the music is
mm,
usually constructively angry about something, or at least the bands that I was into, they're like part of like the positive straight edge movement, and so
mhm,
they were talking about like community issues or moral issues or ethical issues that they were upset about, and there's usually some kind of takeaway or some kind of spin on it to make it constructive. And so that's where I first got like a lot of my positive attitude, but my emotional intelligence still wasn't fully formed. I had a lot of bad um, bad perspectives, and like part of that's like
mhm,
uh, so like I'm still a Christian. Grew up Christian,
mhm,
um, with a tenuous relationship with my faith. But
yeah,
a lot of people in religion, they are attracted to religion because they're afraid and it summarizes the world in black and white. And the more I've become a
mm,
believer, the more I've studied the Bible, the more I've prayed and gotten to know people who are suffering, who are hurting, who are grieving. Um, there's a lot of gray, and I think that religion
yeah,
does equip us to think in the gray, but there's not a lot of people in faith who are equipping people to think in the gray. And
mm,
so between like hardcore and my faith, and then going to the army, experiencing friends committing suicide, etc.,
mm,
seeing death, seeing stressful, sleepless, foodless days, right? Um,
yeah,
I was exposed to the gray, and then I started going to therapy like 5 years ago for a number of things.
mhm,
But I think kind of that was the capstone of becoming an emotionally intelligent human being. I have it written on my whiteboard back there, but at the top, I have two things. One says, feelings illuminate needs, which require actions. That's a reference to a book called Voice of the Heart by this guy named Chip Dodd. It's all about what our feelings are, what needs they reveal, and then what actions we ought to take to meet those needs. And then it
mm,
also explains, he uses an 8 feelings model, but it tells you that there's no negative feelings or positive feelings. There's unhealthy and healthy expressions of anger, fear,
mm,
gladness, etc. Um, and so that's been really, really helpful. Um, and then also I have written up there that grieving is an invitation to fight for something. So a lot of times in
ooh,
grief, we either get overwhelmed, we despair, and I see that with my customers all the time. There's like, this is unsolvable, or this is a
yeah,
Microsoft bug. There's no way we can solve this kind of thing. And we see that a lot, like when you open a ticket with no information. I just assume like uh, the customer is either so frustrated that they haven't even tried to solve it, or they spend a lot of time. They have no clue what is true or not true about the problem, and so they're just kind of like Jesus, take the wheel, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, my name's Brian, not Jesus, but I'll do my best. But yeah, but yeah, and so a lot of times they're essentially experiencing like some kind of grief or flooding, like I talked about, and when I come into the problem, I'm thinking like, okay, like we're gonna fight for facts, basically. Like that's my goal, is to lead the customer into facts. Because the way that
Mhm.
Microsoft's privacy rules work, I can't go into the logs and pull out whatever I want. I have to ask the customer to take packet captures for the most part. I have to ask the customer to get
Mm.
event logs or web logs or whatever we need to solve that problem. I can't just pull them for them.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have to guide the customer into wanting to work for me, essentially. A lot of times we
Yeah.
think like support is there to work for the customer and just make the problem go away, but really a lot of times what my job is, just like when I was a platoon leader, is to inspire people to do things that they really don't want to do. And that might be set up a packet capture, that might be, go dig into their DNS records and see if we can't find what's wrong. And they're tired, and I have to be like, look, like this is the utility of this task. Let's go turn a stone over together. And I find a lot of times these customers become people who I either connect with on LinkedIn. I've had customers that actually I worked with a case on with them, and they either work at
Yeah.
Microsoft or actually work on my team. And it's because like ultimately, like what you said, like 80 to 90% of this stuff is forming relationships with people and
Yeah.
yeah, leading them into the fight, to put a military metaphor on it. But um, yeah, so I really like that piece of it. I love coaching. Um, I love inspiring people to do things.
Oh man, I absolutely love that. What was that quote again about grief? That it's an invitation
Grief is an invitation to fight for something.
to fight for
Um,
something.
yeah,
Ah,
because
that's so
grief
good.
communicates it communicates value about something that you used to have that you don't have anymore. The
Yeah.
harder you grieve, the more valuable that thing was, the more you loved it, the more it brought you gladness. And it's the same thing with anger. Healthy anger is a response to a proper response to injustice. Unhealthy anger is rage. It's not
Mm.
um, it's not a constructive, right? But healthy anger,
Yeah.
instead of being angry at something, you're angry for an outcome. You're angry for hope,
Mm.
whatever hope is in that context. And so, in some sense, like I bring that anger from like myself as a small little hardcore punk kid. I take
Yeah.
healthy anger and I bring it to the networking fight, right? Because I'm angry for this person to not be frustrated by our product anymore. And some customers make that easy to be angry for them. Some people make it harder to be angry for them, depending depending on how kind they are. But yeah, I try to make it hard to be angry at me, um, not because I'm manipulative, but because I
Mhm.
at some in most cases I genuinely care that that customer's having a bad day. I don't really care
Yeah.
about the computers or about their problem. I care that they're being inconvenienced by it, and I'd love to make
Mm.
their day a little bit better.
I absolutely love that. Cause yeah, because you're flipping it on its head of, you know, them thinking that, well, one, you never want them to think that you're against them.
Hmm.
The goal is to let them know that you are for them, that you are working with them to, help their day to be better, for their work to flourish, so that
Hmm.
they can be, efficient again, and not have to, worry about whatever this issue is that they've ran into.
Yeah,
Um, and that's so important for, IT people, to realize and to work on, is
right.
that perspective. That's so good. Um, Gosh, there are so many nuggets in in what you just dropped. Uh, uh, just kind of flipping gears just a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, since you've been working, in IT, what has been your favorite productivity hack?
Yeah. I use a whiteboard a lot. We have a lot of different
Mm.
like digital tools to either track when you last touched a case or uh, just like things that need to be done, etc. The thing that works for me, honestly, is Have you ever read Atomic Habits? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that James Clear? I think.
I don't know who
Or did
wrote
he
it,
write the other
but
one? Okay.
he talks a lot about essentially like building habits by
Hmm.
like creating healthy dopaminergic uh, opportunities um, for productivity. And so
Yeah.
like for me, that's I write the last four of my case numbers on my whiteboard behind me, and when I've touched a case, I write them in black marker and then I check them off in red marker. And sometimes if let's say I've touched the case for the day but I need to come back to it, I need to shoot an email or I need to update a summary or I need to go report new data to an escalation to our product group or something, I'll put like PG or I'll put email or whatever the
Hmm.
do out is. But it tells me that I've made my mark on that piece of work for the day. And there have been
Hmm.
days recently where I don't get to make a mark on everything, but when I'm having trouble focusing, I will not touch my email, not touch my Teams, not touch my case tool, and I'll just start writing down the last four of all my cases, because that's the thing that's going to say like, okay, I got an empty list. Let's get one win, let's get two wins,
Hmm.
and then hopefully I get 15 to 25 wins, however many cases I'm managing at a time. But I think what the whiteboarding things has been huge for me, and also I'm whiteboarding um, uh, like topology. So as a network engineer, like topology is so important. It's crazy. You'll come into all these cases where they say, I can't connect to Azure. You're like, okay, what's the IP you're coming from? What's the IP you're going to? And they're like, I'm not sure. And you're like, oh man, okay, this is where we're starting, and then you ask, what's the traffic path? Is it taking a VPN, Internet Express route? Is there firewalls? Are there proxies? And they don't know. And so a lot of my
Hmm.
job is recreating that path for the customer to the best of my ability. If we're dealing with BGP where they have multiple sessions that are all advertising a default route,
Yeah.
uh, I have no clue where that traffic's going on prem, but I know what Azure gateway it's going to, right? Kind of stuff like that. So, but I topology out as much as I can. I do use the whiteboard tool a lot on my computer. So it's funny
Yeah.
because at one point I was very big on Visio because I didn't want to look messy to the customer. But I found a
Yeah.
lot of times working with the customer on a screen share with a whiteboard is sometimes the best way to get their mind on track, get their thoughts organized back to that emotional intelligence piece. Like
Mm.
um, fear, like the proper response to fear is planning and then accepting what you can't control. And um, and so planning that's an antidote to their fear. If they are afraid of the problem, they think it's taking too long to solve. That whiteboard can sometimes draw out their fear. That's just kind of a blob of chaos in their brain, create some clarity in the situation. I had a case just recently where we were dealing with, long story short, a route was reflected where it shouldn't be, and
Mhm.
it was causing traffic to time out on a specific NIC that forwarded outbound traffic to itself in all directions. It was a hub NVA, network virtual appliance. And
Yeah.
yeah, and until we had whiteboarded it out, no one believed me that the TTL was actually happening on that NVA. And then as I was drawing it out, their lead network guy or their lead firewall guy, I guess, was like, "No, he's right. Check this out." And then like he kind of was, he kind of got on my side, and we were talking back and forth, getting the whiteboard filled out. And then everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how that's happening, but it's true. We can't refute it because the trace route says so." So
Okay.
yeah,
Got it. Whiteboards,
yeah,
whiteboard things. Yeah, it does, kind of help to, especially if it's in the real world, to write it. I feel like there's a connection that happens when you physically write things out that just doesn't happen digitally.
yep.
Um, but yeah, that's such a good hack.
Yeah,
And
sorry,
yeah,
I don't
so
have any cool
oh yeah,
apps or anything. I'm really, for an IT guy, I don't game, I don't build PCs, I never did.
yeah,
Uh, I'm just not a very techie guy. I don't like having the newest phone. I think I always buy a refurbished phone that's like 2 models old. And
yeah,
so for me, a lot of times it's like that analog planning, and like it goes back to my experience in the army of like controlling the
hmm,
fight. As a platoon leader, they say, here's an objective you got to clear the enemy off of, and these are the resources you have to accomplish it. Sometimes it's just your platoon, sometimes you have mortars, sometimes you have machine guns, Apaches, whatever.
yeah,
uh, and you got to figure out, how do we clear this objective, how do we take it or seize it or whatever the mission is. And that's kind of how my brain interacts with networking problems, because they are, I joke like, being a network engineer is like playing a video game with terrible graphics and too many rules. Like, oh, my character can't walk over here because this setting is in place, or there's this obstacle, and
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how to move the board game piece from point A to point D,
Mm.
kind of thing, and it's just a bunch of different rules that can stop me or help me. So yeah, drawing that out helps kind of control the chaos and all those different ideas or possibilities bouncing around in your head.
No, I also love that. And yeah, not every, IT person has to live up to the, stereotype of, being a neckbeard and and has, horrible eating habits or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's also something I want to highlight to people who are considering getting to IT, that no, we need people who come from a lot of different backgrounds,
Hmm.
because yeah, a lot of these problems, can only a lot of times can only be like solved quickly and more efficiently by different types of minds
Hmm.
with different experiences, because you're able to bring those past experiences and apply it to this problem where other people might not have that experience. And so the connection or the solution to the problem might, or a solution to the problem, um, might not arrive as quickly. And that's
Yeah.
the thing with IT too, is that a lot of times there can be multiple solutions. There's just,
Hmm.
trade-offs
Yep.
on how to get there. And so, part of the experience is figuring out like how to solve the problem with the least amount of, setbacks
Mm.
as possible.
Yeah, I mean, even
Um,
like, I don't know if
yeah.
you've taken Microsoft certs, but they always are like, you got to do this as cheaply as possible with as little
Uh-huh.
administrative overhead as possible. And a lot of times that tells you what the correct answer is, even though it's not
Mhm.
the sexiest or the one that will look the coolest or show your knowledge the most. A lot of times it's going back to those fundamentals,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. It's not always about being, flashy,
Hmm.
just yeah, solve the problem. And,
Hmm.
people generally like to save money. So
Yeah.
so you don't have to choose the most expensive route. Again, just depending on the circumstance.
Right.
Oh, and then I did just Google it, and yeah, Atomic Habits was written by James Clear.
Okay.
Which yeah, I would recommend that book to anyone. Just
Yeah.
even
IT or
just on
not.
on a side note. Yeah, yeah, IT
Yeah.
or not. IT or
Yeah.
not.
Hmm.
Yeah, whether you're trying to, get in shape, or um, you've had, issues with
Hmm.
that. I think it was him who said that, people don't uh, rise to their habits. They
Yeah.
yeah, they don't rise
Well,
to their habits.
I,
They
I don't.
like fall to their systems or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't remember
They have in place.
the exact quote, but the military has one where they say like, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your lowest level of training, or highest
Mm,
level of training, maybe. I don't know, but it's the same idea that like, yeah, when chaos happens, you go back to what you've rehearsed, you go back to fundamentals, and
yep.
then you stack fundamentals on fundamentals on fundamentals, and hopefully you get out of whatever
Mm-hmm.
problem you're in.
100%.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh, what's some advice that you would give your younger self in regards to IT?
Um, I was very like high strung about I didn't want to appear weak.
Mm,
I was very slow to asking questions. I wanted to go research like every topic I could, and I burned myself out like really really fast.
mm,
When I got to Microsoft though, I was lucky to have two really good technical advisors that uh, one of them had a big chair next to his desk, and when we were still physical in office, I've been work from home for
mm,
a couple years now, but I would go sit in his chair because he was hard at work, and whenever he had time, he like knew I was sitting there. I wouldn't say anything. He'd just turn to me and be like, "What you got?" And I'd be like, "I already sent you stuff on Teams. This is like the problem I'm running into," and he'd go give me a thing to do, and I'd go run it into the ground, and then I'd be like, "I'm stuck again. I
mm,
have no clue what I'm doing." And most of my mastery of my skill sets has ultimately been because of people like him who gave me the time of day. But it was up to me to go knock at the door and be that annoying person. Or like in Luke 18, I always tell people the story about the widow who wants a judgment from a judge, and so she knocks his door till he's annoyed and is like, fine, like here's the ruling that you need. And talks about basically like, if God loves us, he's not gonna be annoyed by us asking. He's gonna give us what we need up front. But I try to be the widow. I try to annoy people until they give me the information I need. So I would just say, like, don't be afraid of looking stupid. There's not a single person in this industry who knows everything. If they act like they do, they're lying. Can't tell you how many times I see somebody who's a software engineer, for example, which is a skill set I don't have and is intimidating to me, and they don't know the very, very basic stuff about networking. They'll open tickets for very simple problems, and that makes me feel affirmed or competent or whatever. And then I go ask them simple questions, and they feel affirmed and competent, and hopefully we created some vulnerability so they're not afraid to ask me a question ahead of time before opening a ticket the next time or whatever. I'd say just ask questions, expect less of yourself, or maybe expect more of yourself in fewer areas, and stop trying to expect yourself to conquer every single domain. It's not possible, and it's probably not helpful. Um,
Yeah.
it's better to know, like, I always say on my team, hey, know when to tap out. And I don't mean quit at that point. What I'm saying is, like, know when to say, I've researched enough. I'm not going to completely learn this skill area in time to solve this case, but I did learn something. So I tell our new engineers, work on a problem for 45 minutes and then bring the results of your research to me, and I'll help you get to the next step. But you got to do that research. You have to fight for a little bit before you tap out too. So it's
Yeah.
not just give up and give in, but it's just have. In counseling we call it healthy limitedness or healthy shame. Like, you're not immortal or infinite. Be okay with it. Like, say, like, I'm a dang good network engineer. I'm a really bad SQL engineer. So when I get a SQL problem, I'm gonna call a SQL guy and tell him,
Yeah.
hey man, I'm dumb about SQL, but you are purportedly not. This is what I've done, and I haven't. And if you want to know any other logs I may or may not have pulled, they're not there. This is all of it. And then they're like, oh well, you just pull this log and it'll show you X, and now your problem solved. And you're like, man, I'm glad that you exist.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And then also, because you're vulnerable in that moment, the next time you run into a similar issue, you're going to be able to apply what you learned and solve that issue like
Yep.
quicker.
Yeah.
And then people will think you're a genius, but it's like, no, I've just ran into this problem before.
Yep.
and
Yep.
and someone taught me how to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I have a few rapid fire questions to close us out.
Okay.
All right, what do you do to relax?
So I weightlift, and I shoot.
Mhm.
When I was an infantry officer, uh, I used to try to get a second workout in after work and stuff, and that really helped me separate work life from home life. So I didn't
Mhm.
bring things home quite as much. Um, there's tons of benefits to fitness, but
Yeah.
I really always liked Olympic lifting, so that's the thing that I still try to pursue. And then when I was a platoon leader, I realized that, like, our job was to be like, people call the military a profession of arms. Yet we shot, once every other month or something, and that didn't seem right to
Yeah.
me. And so I was looking for ways to get better. And so there's a practice called dry firing where you will practice. I say the way I describe it is eyes to gun to target back to brain. So you can practice a whole lot of shooting
Uh-huh.
with without shooting a single shot. So I'll be like in my office. I have, like, literally have targets on the wall over there, and I'll practice transitions or coming out of the holster and building repetitive reps. And that's almost like a meditative experience for me, because you're doing the same
Mm.
gross motor skill over and over and over again. And it's I don't know if you saw that there. I'm a Protestant, but I have a rosary on the wall. One of my good friends, he became a Catholic recently, and
Mhm.
and as part of his journey, I wanted to explore like that prayer practice with him. So I kind of wrote my own like
Mm,
Protestant rosary that helps me memorize scripture. And so it's the same type of thing. Going through the beads, repeating the verses is the same as coming out of the holster and doing click 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 again, and
yeah.
seeing your body align with the firearm is same as like seeing your mind align with your spirit, kind of um, be conformed to that practice. So yeah, I try to do like
Oh, that's cool.
repetitive meditative things. Used to be into like ammunition reloading too, and that was a similar thing where you're just kind of like case goes in, powder goes in, bullet goes in, seat the bullet, crimp it. Okay, next one, and it's you do it, 200, 300, 400 times, and it's very relaxing, makes you feel in control of your environment.
I love that. But yeah,
Hmm.
my wife and I were going through like a parenting class, and it's based on like biblical principles, and
Hmm.
they have us memorizing scripture, but not just us, but also our daughter too. And we're like repeating these things,
Hmm.
and you know, and it helps to make it actually a part of everyday life,
Right.
so that if she does something, whether it was selfish or not selfish, we'll ask, is that considering the interests of others above yourself? And she knows what that means. We've
Hmm.
talked through it, and so we're able to just have this vocabulary, just to address different heart issues.
Right.
Because yeah, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and the actions that we take
Yep.
are secondary to what's in our hearts.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I love that you're doing that with the rosary. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
It's all just grounding behavior too. Like if
Hmm.
you're familiar with grounding behavior of any kind in counseling, that's all it is really. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
great.
All right, iOS or Android?
Uh, I'm a I'm a turncoat. I've gone back and forth multiple times. I'd say I probably like Android best just because I can have an emulator with Pokemon on my phone.
Yes, love it, love it. Yeah, that is a great thing about Android, and I tell people all the time. I just finally maybe switched to iOS maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I
Okay.
tell people that the best feature of iOS is that it's stopped friends from asking me to switch from Android to iOS.
See, my wing is an 8 on Enneagram, so I kind of like upsetting people
Ah,
just a little
okay.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm currently an Android user, but was an iPhone user before this.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I feel like this would be a very biased question, but Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Windows for sure.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
understand it the most. Though the more I've done Linux, the more I understand why like a sysadmin would love it.
Hmm.
The troubleshooting process is so easy compared to Windows. But yeah,
Yeah. Coffee or tea?
coffee. Oh, is that even a question?
Yeah, I mean, some people really love their tea.
You did ask me if I
Um,
want to plug anything. Aroma Coffee Shop in Fall City, Washington. I'm there 6 days a week. It's the only time I see human beings. So
whenever I visit Washington, I'll have to check that out.
yeah.
Are you a night owl or a morning bird?
Oh, night owl. My productivity window is 9 p.m. to midnight for sure. But the army made me a morning bird. I still actually get up at like 5 5:15 every day usually.
Yeah,
So yeah, night owl by nature, morning bird by choice.
beautiful. Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for coming on the show. There's so many nuggets of wisdom that you dropped, and I really appreciate you for just taking the time out of your day to come on my little O show.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. This was super fun and it was great to catch up and see your face again. Um, and I really do mean that. So hopefully we
Yeah,
can do something like
absolutely.
this in person.
Yes. Sounds good. All right. Thank you.